when you buy Bitcoin, it's because you love Bitcoin. I give you like this little scenario. Let's say you go to a flea market and you see a Van Gogh is on sale at the flea market and it's priced at $5. So, and you know with certainty that it's a $100 million Van Gogh. So now there's three options here. You can, you can go to the owner of the flea market and complain and say, this is outrageous. That Van Gogh's worth 100 million, you're selling it for 5. And you can complain. Number two, you can be certain it's a Van Gogh, but you don't even want to put up $5 to own it. You don't have, you're just not that, you're just not even going to risk $5. You're not going to do it. Number three is you're going to buy that Van Gogh for $5 and you'll be very happy you did. So let's play this out with Bitcoin. The first scenario you've got right now, Bitcoin's at 30,000. It's worth, you know, 10, $20 million a coin at some point. So you got a lot of people that would complain about this, like the Christine Lagardes of the world or the Nouriel Rubinis. They go to the regulators or whomever, the press, they say, they complain like, look, this asset, I'm going to complain about it. It's worth millions, but you know, it's selling for 30,000, and they just complain and they talk about it. Then the second group you have, oh, it's at 30,000, it's worth millions, but they just don't, they're not going to bother buying it at 30,000. That would be your Peter Schiffs of the world, who I told to buy Bitcoin when it was $1 and $5 and $10 and $50. But even though the case was clear that it's a new asset class and it could be worth millions, he didn't even want to put up $5. So that's the Peter Schiff crowd. Then you have the third group, which is where we were, where it's like, you know what, this is a new asset class. It's going to be worth millions. I'll put, you know, I'll buy it at $5. You know, I'm happy with that at the risk reward there. And that's still true today. And at 30,000, it's still dirt cheap compared to where it's going. But you still have people who are going to complain about it, like Liz Warren or somebody that, oh my God, I just can't believe that this thing is out there. Or you have people that are just not going to spend the time to understand it. The Peter Schiff still doesn't own it. And then you have the folks that have put in a few hours of work and said, hey, you know, this is worth millions of dollars. I'm going to buy it at 30. I'll buy it at 20. I'll buy it at 60. I'll buy it at 100,000. Doesn't make any difference. I understand the value proposition. I understand how it exists in the ecosystem of the world of fiat money, and I'm going to own it. So those are the three groups, and it's cheap at 30,000. It's cheap at 100,000. I think one of the bigger drawdowns we've had, I think 80, 85% drawdowns. You know, we had from 30 back to $1, 1,200 back to 200, 20,000 down to 3,800. Now 70,000 down to 30,000. And at this particular juncture, on this particular one, I don't really think about it at all, which is different than the early ones. So the early ones, because as Stacy points out, the main developing crew, the core developers of Bitcoin themselves were in revolt, and they were talking about hard forking and the big blockers, which wasn't resolved until 2017. But those types of issues were already being discussed, and those would be existential threats to the success of Bitcoin. So the downside was more palpable. The risk reward on Bitcoin right now is one of the most favorable ever. You know, in terms, you don't really have that level of core contention that would be a risk vector. You know, you just don't have it. So at the moment, it's become almost a mature asset class, if you can believe it. But I mean, it's getting closer to being certainly an established asset class, and you have an established group of people owning it. And I would say, you know, this question comes up, and the answer is that if you're, so now the pullback is back to this level, and it's building a nice base, and before it makes that big assault to another price range. I think this price range and this era in Bitcoin, I call the Michael Saylor era. So Michael Saylor came in roughly 2 years ago. He started buying it at 10,000. I think MicroStrategy started buying it at 20,000. They've got a cost basis of 30,700, and which is roughly this range, this price range, the Michael Saylor era, MicroStrategy era. But I think we're coming to the end of that era, and we're going to enter a new era. You're going to have the CBDCs come along from the central banks. That'll be paired with maybe a sovereign wealth fund, $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund putting $100 billion into Bitcoin, right? So that'll be a new era. And when that takes shape, the Bitcoin price can jump very quickly, very fast into the six-figure range. I think back to my Wall Street days, and Peter Lynch wrote some great books on stock markets. He wrote one called One Up on Wall Street. It's a classic. He talks about how the year's gain in a winter in a stock market typically happens over a 5 to 6 day period, a very compressed period of time. When you look back over the year and you said, oh, I own this stock, I made 20%. Well, it generally happened, that move happened over 1 week, maybe an earnings surprise or something like that. So, you never know exactly when that week is going to come, but if you're not in the market during that week, you will have missed that move. So Bitcoin from 30,000 to 300,000 can happen pretty quickly. I think right now, also another wave that we're seeing is the collapse of the third wave of major frauds in crypto with the VC money, the VC coins, the Web3 coins. This is the third major wave of fraud. It seems to be breaking up at this time with the Luna scam and the Solana scam, and all these. Ethereum is basically a scam. So all these scams are now kind of falling apart. This is the third wave since the beginning of Bitcoin. And that'll bring in now a new wave. And I think that new wave, Stacy talks about really the CBDCs as being the fourth major wave of central bank crypto fraud, right? It's no longer going to be Andreessen Horowitz doing crypto fraud. It'll be European Central Bank doing crypto fraud. Christine Lagarde will be doing crypto fraud. And that'll be the fourth wave. And concurrent with that would be a Bitcoin price in the six figures. So these, they kind of go together. I don't think you can, there's no correlation. Bitcoin is not really correlated with anything. It temporarily might correlate with NASDAQ. It temporarily might correlate with commodities. But ultimately, it doesn't correlate with anything. It's on its own vector, and it's just heading to a much higher place. And any correlation in any short period of time is more coincidental than it is fact-based or fundamental-based. So I think that's where we're at. But you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And the whole country is being transformed by Bitcoin and the ethos of Bitcoin and the aesthetic beauty of Bitcoin, the practicality of Bitcoin. The people on the ground are happy with this. They like the idea of having unconfiscatable wealth. And people will come up to me all the time and say, Max, I have $50 in Bitcoin. And it's the first time in their lives they've had unconfiscatable savings, unconfiscatable wealth, and they're building on it. They're adding to it. And they're happy about it. And it gives you a sense of agency, a sense of pride. They know that their president has been instrumental in part of this whole revolution. And on the sovereign level, of course, the country is squaring off against the IMF and other world organizations, which is, I think, being applauded by everybody who sees the threat of these supranational world organizations being overreaching. And that's becoming a greater problem on a daily basis.